Hi, welcome along to another video. This time we'll look at the UK's HAARP facility, HAARP-like facility, USA legislation, some international news finishing up in Australia, and then we'll finish up with the Alaskan HAARP facility, HAARP. So starting with some news from 2024. So kind of old news, but if you need it confirming, this is the UK's ionospheric heater, a HAARP-like facility, and it's been closed in 2024. So as of 2024, as far as we know, the UK no longer has an ionospheric heater. The website is going to be maintained in order to provide an ongoing access to information and resources associated with the facility. So I haven't closed the website or anything, it's just the facility. American legislation did hear in the last day, I think it was yesterday, day before, we're on the 6th of April, that the Florida bill has been stripped. So hopefully I'll find some more information out about that in the coming week or two. But unconfirmed, but from a good source that bill has been stripped. And it's probably like what we'll look at now, the Arizona one, and kind of big news one coming up in a bit. So the Arizona one, Senate Bill 1432, it would ban geoengineering projects in Arizona, but it will not end the cloud seeding operations or weather modification. So you say they're banning climate modification, but they're keeping their weather modification operations. So it's a 50-50, halfway there kind of thing. So that was Arizona at the beginning of March. Florida on the 5th of March, so also, the first week in March, the bill that was put forward there had been postponed, but there was no reason given. So it's temporarily postponed as of first week in March. But like I say, a few weeks later, from what I know is it's going to go ahead, but it's gutted. It's been gutted. No doubt to keep weather modification, but ban geoengineering. We will see. That was in the Florida politics. Over to Iowa, and there's a report stating Iowa Republicans trying to stop people from controlling the weather. And there were 23 members of the Iowa House signing on to that bill. That was also banning geoengineering, but I think that one includes weather modification as well. From the Democratic side on that Iowa bill, the Republican bill, so bills on elections, immigration and guns squeak past legislature's funnel deadline. And there is spoken about the bill for House Bill 191, which would ban geoengineering, says geoengineering. They're saying it's tied by the legislation to the chemtrails conspiracy theory, which is the aircraft are spraying chemicals to affect health, fertility, or weather patterns. So it used to be mind control, didn't it? Now it's fertility. Oh, how things change. But anyway, carrying on, they do then state the bill references geoengineering, and then, of course, they give an explainer from Harvard about what geoengineering is. They don't actually tell you anything about geoengineering. Common theme in the mainstream media is to discuss the subject without discussing the subject. And, of course, another common theme is to be extremely tricky. North Dakota, where legislation is on the horizon. So Fargo Jet Center, to do with Weather Modification International, sister company, it's inaugurated its first purpose-built maintenance facility at the end of 2024. It carries out conversions for missions such as cloud seeding or weather modification. I think that's the Aviation Industry News website. So that was North Dakota's Weather Modification Incorporated Fargo Jet Center doing their business. Even if weather modification and geoengineering gets outlawed in North Dakota, that doesn't mean a company like that is going to shut its doors. Just continue supplying planes to its previous or new customers elsewhere. Legislation might stop it, but the industry will still be continuing until it's stopped globally, of course. So March the 4th, Watford City residents, Mackenzie County, I believe, they're calling for an end to the cloud seeding program in North Dakota. So the Mackenzie County one. Tennessee, mentioned this in the last video, I believe, that they're going for a second round of legislation, and it's passed in the Tennessee State House. So the bill enacting consequences for geoengineering in Tennessee passes House subcommittee. So that's on its way through. Texas. Now this is interesting. Because when we've spoken about legislation before, there's a big difference between a state that doesn't really have a weather modification programme and definitely doesn't have a geoengineering programme, introducing legislation to circumvent what happens in the coming times, in the future, compared to somewhere like Texas, which has been modifying their weather for decades, got multiple weather modification programmes. They work with international partners. Experiments of new technology take place in Texas. It's in the world of weather and climate modification. Texas was sold out a long time ago. Texas Bill 1154, relating to a prohibition on weather and climate modification activities by a government entity. And there you can see it's relating to a prohibition on weather and climate modification activities. That one's a surprise. We'll keep an eye on that. So if that passes, that's huge. That's as big as California stopping it. And Colorado stopping it is not as big as California or Texas. California and Texas are just, California is number one. Texas, number two. So that's where you're getting up to, that level. Like the number two in American weather modification could be passing legislation to prohibit it. It only really leaves California and you're really starting to knock them out the ballpark. Well done, America, as usual. Over to Utah. Utah senators tackle solar geoengineering. What is it? You better find out pretty quick. So despite initial changes to the bill, the committee endorsed the original bill, passing it with an 8-1 vote. So that gives you an idea of how politicians are working in their senates on this subject, is that it passed with an 8-1 vote. We saw one fail with almost sort of a 60-40 vote. That was in North Dakota, their one. So here we're seeing it in Utah where it's passing 8-1. Colorado. We mentioned this paper in the last video just because they just showed a cloud seeding trailer. There's another one. There's an article, Cloud Seeding Effort Focuses on Front Range, Eastern Colorado Rivers. Toying with Mother Nature isn't as scary as it sounds in the context of cloud seeding. But Mother Nature is quite scary in the context of your house being ripped apart by a hurricane, isn't it? Anyway, Colorado still at it. In some international news, we see in India, they're umming and ahhing on whether to use cloud seeding or not to deal with pollution. So they're mandating anti-smog guns, etc. But additionally, the minister highlighted the need for cloud seeding as a potential measure to combat pollution. Daily battles, air pollution, etc. Cloud seedings bring artificial rain, so the government with ministers also seeking central government approval for cloud seeding technology to induce artificial rain when pollution levels spike. So, prepped. India, prepped. Indonesia. So if we go through a couple of headlines from the beginning of March, BNPB uses cloud seeding to control rain in Greater Jakarta on the 4th of March. BNPB ensures adequate logistical support for Jakarta flood victims. You'll remember from the previous video that saw Indonesia is like the UAE. They're always at it, like China. It doesn't stop. It's ongoing. So the Voice of India, VOI, head of BMKG ensures weather modification, priority of Boga Peak area. VOI on the 4th of March as well, reduce the government, saying that the government have added weather modification operations, and really it's all about the picture, isn't it? Reuters, an international news association, floods in Indonesia's capital displace thousands, but they do mention that they're conducting weather modification operations, which they say typically includes shooting salt flares into clouds to trigger rain before they reach land. There's no such thing, basically. Where do you even start with that? Typically includes shooting salt flares into clouds. It absolutely does not. There's no shooting flares involved. You flare off silver iodide from flares that are attached to the back of a wing of an aeroplane. You don't shoot nothing. Silver iodide could be considered as salt added to the clouds, but weather modification methods do include adding salt to clouds. What you've just seen in that image from inside the aeroplane, that's getting ready to disperse actual salt, industry-grade salt, into clouds. So you're seeing a mixture there of two pieces of information, which creates a false piece of information. Shooting salt flares into clouds, it just doesn't do that. To trigger rain before they reach land, that's also just not what happens. You can trigger rain overland as well. That's making it sound like it's all being done to stop the rain coming to the land and flooding the place. And it's just ridiculous. You can do atmospheric moisture redistribution, but all you can do is trigger stuff. That was the only word in that sentence that is correct, is trigger. And that's all you can do, is trigger things. You can influence, you can manipulate. You cannot control in any way, shape or form. If that storm gets out of control, you cannot stop that. And if that storm wants to come in from the sea into the land, it will. Official Indonesian news agency, the Antara, on the 5th of March, government adds aircraft for weather modification to prevent floods. Yes, everyone else is doing it because of drought, the complete opposite. That's how far this conspiracy theory is. That doesn't exist. Oh dear. China's news agency, Indonesia, to launch second phase of weather modification to prevent flooding in Jakarta surrounding areas. I think that's maybe a typo with the second. It should be 27,000th phase. There is no second phase. Not in 2025. They've been modifying their weather for a long time, every week. Tricky media. Back to the VOI, also on the 5th of March. BMKG prepares weather modification. Rain will be moved to the sea. So we'll just pause there. Not pause for adverts or something. I mean pause there to actually take that in. If you're watching this and you're in the UK or the USA, this is Indonesian media for Indonesian people. English language, but that's people of foreign nationals who are using English as a neutral language to get news about Indonesia. Unless you go on Indonesian news sites, I guess you probably didn't see this headline. But what I want you to do is compare it to your media. Can you imagine if your media published this headline? The Philippines, Manila Times, sorry, not in the Philippines outlet, the Manila Times, publishes the AFP article, cloud seeded to stem rains after Jakarta floods. And the AFP is a bit off with their fact-checking generally, but they're probably right with that headline. On the 7th of March, it's announced 10 days of weather modification to reduce flood risk. So, was that the third phase? Or 30,000th? What phase is that then? And on the 9th of March, parts of West Java, target of BNPB weather modification operation. So Indonesia, ongoing as usual, for whatever reason, whenever. So over to Malaysia now. Cloud seeding as last resort in Kuantan coconut farm fire, says Minister. On the 7th, government to consider cloud seeding. Also on the 7th, that's the Bernamar article we just looked at, republished in The Sun. Government to consider cloud seeding. And that's the Star. On the 7th, government mulls cloud seeding. So basically, Malaysia is kind of prepping up, a bit of a public warning. It's coming, we're thinking about it. Over to Thailand, 6th of March, cloud seeding operations launched to combat Chiang Mai air pollution. So Northern Royal Rainmaking Operations Centre has deployed aircraft to conduct weather modification operations to deal with pollution in the Chiang Mai province. The Australian Associated Press. Over to Australia then. We've had a Cyclone Alfred, recently, and falsehoods were circulated according to the AAP. How about that? Maybe stay off Facebook or whatever, stay off the social networking sites, and you'll be alright, AAP. So what was claimed, the Cyclone Alfred was started by Chinese warships off the coast of Australia. The verdict of the AAP is false, apparently. Well done you. Experts say there is no technology capable of creating cyclones. How about manipulating them? So, what the AAP article doesn't do, it doesn't inform you of anything else. It just tells you, like, it's not the chemtrails conspiracy, it's not HAARP, it's not because the Prime Minister of Australia changed the name of the storm because the name sounded similar to his or something. You know, whatever. It's just all those usual things. It's just not those, according to the AAP. But they don't actually tell you what is going on and what could actually affect storm systems in the area and surrounding area, even inadvertently. There's no mention of anything. So there's no mention of the company Rainwater Tech. So they do cloud ionization technology, as in the electric charge method. And in 2023, they stated that they'd been active in Australia for 10 years. But there's no mention of that in the AAP article. The cloud ionization technology is being used by Rainwater Tech in Australia. There is also no mention of the marine cloud brightening activities off of Sydney's coast. so-called geoengineering technique, marine cloud brightening, MCB. So there's a map of Australia, etc. A few extras added in there. Now we know Snowy Hydro is on its 5-year break for review purposes. Storm hit Queensland, which is there. That's where the marine cloud brightening operations are. Sydney, roughly. So there you go. That's where the MCB is, and that's where the storm happened. Okay. Indonesia, as you know, just seen, full-on weather modification operations. So does Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, generally everyone around there, including Japan, South Korea and China. So maybe you can't create a cyclone out of nothing, but I'm pretty sure all of those countries' weather modification operations could possibly influence it, couldn't it? That would be the logical conclusion. And as always, it's like if you stop all of the weather modification programs and you get hit by a cyclone, you know that cyclone's natural. But with all that other stuff going on, you don't know. Question everything. And we'll include India and Pakistan there because we can. So back to the AAP article, weather modification expert at Monash University in Australia, which is handy because I'm a weather modification expert as well. Their weather modification expert states tropical cyclones, typhoons and hurricanes are strictly natural phenomena, which you've just seen that any tropical cyclone, typhoon or hurricane that is in any area close to pretty much Mongolia down to southern Australia is being affected by weather modification operations. So there's nothing natural about that. So from one weather modification expert to another, you don't know what you're talking about, Stephen seems. Try again. Must try harder. Do better. And the AAP as well. Like, you've got to try harder. You don't talk about anything. You just talk about conspiracies, stuff you saw on social networking sites. You don't talk about reality, the real world. Over to the UK's MSM, the Daily Mail online. Unbelievable conspiracy theories that's starting to emerge about Cyclone Alfred. They never talk about the actual real world ongoing things. It's always conspiracy theorists blame condensation trails for ex-tropical cyclone Alfred. Chemtrails left by planes in the sky affect the weather. Conspiracists claim. And the Mail one is obviously all about HAARP. HAARP, 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 HAARP. It's all HAARP. The AAP, of course, HAARP, weather manipulation conspiracy spread as Cyclone Alfred nears. And speaking of HAARP, if you have an interest in the subject or the facility in Alaska, there's a 1-hour podcast where an engineer from the facility tells all. So there you go. That was just a little bit of news. Got loads more to come. Loads more to go through. Look after yourselves. Take care. See you next time. And thank you for your comments and things. Hey, they're always appreciated. New subscribers appreciated. Comments appreciated. Take care.